Welcome back to the channel, everybody. My name is Travis and this is Bacon and Backpacking, and today I am in a super good mood because we are going to be starting the first episode of the Backpacking 101 series. Alright, so the goal with episode 1 is going to be to tell you what gear that you need to take with you. Big disclaimer up front, okay? If you are trying to go on your first trip, do not, and I repeat, do not go and buy the cheapest gear you can to get started. Do not go to Walmart, do not go to Amazon, because if you do end up enjoying backpacking, I promise you 100% that you will eventually dislike that gear for one reason or another because it was unreliable or it was too heavy or it was too bulky or whatever, and you will end up replacing it. We've all done this, okay? So I'm trying to spare you that, pain up front, all right? So there's going to be three main ways that you're going to acquire gear for your first trip. So first of all, if you're watching this video, you probably have some of your own gear. You're probably into the outdoors in one way or another. Maybe you do day hikes, maybe you do car camping, maybe you're a hunter or something like that, or you're ex-military, okay? Whatever gear that you already have laying around, even if it isn't specifically designed for backpacking, even if it's big, bulky, heavy, whatever, use whatever gear you have. So that's step one. Second best option is to, borrow gear from a friend or a family member or something like that. If you know other people who are into the outdoors, again, whether it is backpacking or not, borrow sleeping bags, borrow tents, stuff like that, okay? So don't be afraid to ask a buddy. Option number three, you're not an outdoors person. You don't know outdoors people. That's why you're watching this video, okay? Good news is there are a whole bunch of companies out there that do gear rental for pretty cheap. Most of these companies are probably 70 to 80 bucks per person to get an entire backpacking loadout to go borrow for a trip. So REI is one of those, and it is cheaper if you're a member, but there are several out there that are web-based that will rent out that equipment for you. All right, so let's go ahead and dive into this thing. We're going to start with the big three. Right now, again, we're talking about using what you have, borrowing, and renting, all right? So number one is going to be your shelter, okay? There's a couple different ways you can go about this. You could be a hammock camper, you could be a tarp camper, or you could be a tent camper. For somebody who's just starting off, okay, I would definitely use a tent, more specifically a freestanding tent. You're going to see a video come across here, and it's going to show you an example of a non-freestanding tent, which is what most backpackers use. But again, if we're just getting started out, I would recommend a tent with tent poles, okay? It's way easier to set up. You can be a complete beginner with no skills or knowledge and be able to set it up pretty much the first time with no issues. With that being said, I would still recommend when you get that gear to go ahead and set it up at least once, like in your backyard or something like that, prior to departing on a trip. All right, number two is going to be your sleep system that goes inside of your shelter. So this could mean a bunch of different things as well, but if you are in a freestanding tent, what that's going to mean is some sort of sleeping pad and some sort of sleeping bag, okay? There's a bunch of different options out there on the market, but I would just make sure that you get something that is rated to, the appropriate temperature level. Since this is going to be your first trip or your first couple of trips, I'm going to go ahead and assume that you are in a temperate climate, okay? This is way too nuanced to get into. Just make sure, say if the low is going to be 50, I would probably take like a 30-degree bag or something like that, or lower, just to be safe, all right? As a beginner, do not make the mistake of trying to just sleep on the ground, okay? You cannot just use the bottom of your tent for bottom insulation. It could be 60 degrees outside, you can be in a 20-degree bag, but if you do not have a sleeping pad under you, you will freeze. You will lose a ton of heat through the ground, not to mention it is super uncomfortable, all right? There are two layers to that sleeping system. There is the insulation that is on top of you, and there's the insulation that is under you. Now, I put this at number three because it is one of the big three, okay? But this will probably be the last thing you want to get. You need a backpack, okay? You're probably going to want to wait until you get all of the other gear put together before you grab a pack to make sure that all of that gear fits, okay? If you have the ability to go do it in a store like REI, definitely make sure you get the pack fitted so you can have the most comfortable experience possible. Along with that pack, you have to remember, you need something to waterproof the contents inside. You can do that with dry bags, you can do that with a pack liner, or you could do it with a pack cover. Go to the store, buy a box of trash compactor bags, not trash bags, trash compactor bags. Use that as a pack liner to keep all your gear dry. All right, number 4 is going to be clothing. Again, this is way too nuanced to get into, but I would suggest for your first couple of trips to do it in a temperate environment. Don't do something that is super hot. Don't do something that is super cold. Don't do something that is super wet, okay? So this one could go a lot of different ways, but in general, you want to make sure, you know, that your clothing is going to either keep you cool or keep you warm and keep you dry, okay? You're also going to make sure that you have a way to break the wind if it is a little bit colder, okay? So, you know, take heed of the weather around you and make sure that you plan appropriately. Number 5 is going to be your footwear, okay? So, you know, this also varies quite a bit as well, too. You're going to be looking at a couple of things. I think for your first trip, if it is in a temperate environment, meaning you don't have sub-freezing temperatures, stuff like that, you're probably just going to want to go with like what is comfortable. So if you already have a pair of boots, even if they're not hiking boots, go ahead and wear those. If you have a pair of like outdoor shoes, like trail runners or you know, cross trainers or something like that, it is okay to wear shoes, you know, while you hike and backpack. As a matter of fact, I actually prefer shoes over boots pretty much in every scenario. All right, number 6 is going to be a continuation of clothing. This is going to be your rain gear. What I would recommend, if you can't borrow it, you don't have it, or you can't rent it, this is one of the few things I'd say to just go ahead and buy. You can go to Walmart and buy the Frog Togs rain gear. It's about $20 for the shirt and the pants. The pants are absolute garbage, but they will get you through a couple of trips, okay? I would take some duct tape though, because you're probably going to blow out the crotch of those pants. But the jacket is plenty good, and I actually still have that in my kit today. So for 20 bucks, if you do need to go buy something, go buy a set of Frog Togs just to get you through. You need to take rain gear. I promise you, it will rain every single time that you think that it won't, okay? So make sure that you take rain gear. All right, next up is going to be some sort of light source, okay? Now, if your trip is planned properly and you do everything right, you shouldn't be doing a whole bunch of stuff in the dark. But again, you have to plan for, you know, the unknown. So you probably have some sort of flashlight sitting around your house already. You can use a handheld flashlight. That's fine. If that's all you got, go ahead and use it. But you will find it is nice to have a headlamp mounted up here so you can be hands-free. What if I need to set up my tent in the dark, you know, go to the bathroom in the dark, whatever, right? So I would highly recommend borrowing or renting a headlamp. All right, number 7 is going to be water, and probably one of the most important. No matter what goes wrong on your backpacking trip, you're not going to starve to death. Even if you got lost for an entire day or two, you're not going to starve to death out there, okay? But you could have problems if you don't have any water. Now, again, this is a very nuanced topic. What kind of climate are you in? What are the conditions? How big are you? You know, that's all going to factor into how much water you take. Is there water on the trail? Stuff like that. That is going to be for a future video. The idea in general is just make sure that you have enough water for the trip, okay? Generally, I'm carrying about 2 liters of water at any given time, all right? I prefer smart water bottles or life water bottles just because of their slim profile. They fit in most water bottle pouches in packs, okay? And they're plenty durable enough that you can still drop them and they'll be fine. You don't need a canteen. You don't need a Nalgene. You don't need any sort of big, heavy water bottle. Just get a couple bottles of smart water. Whether or not you need water filtration, again, will depend on a whole bunch of different factors, okay? But I will cover that in a future video. If you decide that you absolutely need water filtration, I would recommend going with a Sawyer Squeeze. It is like the cheapest and most accessible thing that you can get. All right, number 8. So right after water is obviously going to be food, okay? Bunch of things you can do here, but you can go get like Cliff Bars and protein bars and bags and nuts and stuff like that to where you don't need to cook or heat anything up. So I have a couple of episodes about food while backpacking on my channel already, so go ahead and subscribe, look back through the videos and check those out if you want to go more in depth. But for your first trip, you don't need to buy a stove or anything like that. If you go with a friend, cool. okay, use theirs, but you don't have to have one. All right, and then along with food, something that not everybody thinks about, bring a gallon freezer bag to put all of your empty wrappers in your trash in. You shouldn't be, leaving wrappers out there in the woods. The planet's got enough problems already without you adding wrappers to it. I also wouldn't recommend burning it either. It's just kind of distasteful, and you don't want to be sitting around a fire with a bunch of burning plastic in it anyways if you decide to have a fire. All right, number 10 is going to be navigation. These days all of the smartphone based apps are pretty good. I prefer Gaia. You could use All Trails as well, and I've never really had either one of those fail me. But you cannot rely on electronics. I have seen videos and read stories of people who, froze to death and died on the side of mountains because their actual GPS unit and their smartphone and their radio all went down. So you're going to want to make sure that you also have like a paper map and a compass, and then more importantly, that you know how to use them. There are plenty of places where you can do land navigation courses. You can look up YouTube videos and stuff like that. But if you want to be self-taught and you want to watch YouTube to learn how to do that, okay, make sure that before you go out to a remote area, that you go practice that out on a day hike someplace in an area that you're familiar with. But make sure that you have a map and a compass as a backup to your electronics. All right, and then the final thing we're going to finish up with here is going to be your miscellaneous stuff, like your ditty bag, right? Like your hygiene. Make sure that you have some toilet paper or baby wipes. A trowel is not necessary, but it makes it easier to dig a cat hole to dispose of waste. Or you could use a stick or a rock or your boot or something like that if the conditions permit. While a toothbrush and toothpaste may not be absolutely necessary, you'll probably find that you want that, okay? Don't bother with soap, deodorant, things like that. You're gonna stink and be disgusting no matter what you do, and nothing's gonna hide that. So save the weight, don't take it with you. Some other miscellaneous things that you might want to consider. Minor first aid, okay? This is not a tourniquet or a trauma kit or anything like that. It is just to handle the basic things you may run into. Blisters, scrapes, minor cuts, abrasions, stuff like that, okay? So you might want to have some band-aids, some antiseptic wipes, some moleskin in case you get some blisters, stuff like that. With medical, like with a lot of other things, if you don't have the skills to use it, it shouldn't be in your kit because it's just going to be dead weight, okay? So I would just take a very minor first aid kit. All right, everybody. So again, the idea with this was so you can beg, borrow, steal, whatever, some kit to get you out on your first trip. Again, this is not meant to be a comprehensive guide. I have a ton of other videos on the channel reviewing my kit, various pieces of gear, stuff like that. This video is just to tell you what you absolutely have to take with you. There are other things that are nice to have with you or that you should have with you, but these are the only things that you need to actually get yourself out on a trip, be comfortable, be safe, and make it back, okay? So as this series progresses, I will be releasing videos in between my trip videos, okay? This series is going to progress to probably like 20 episodes or something like that. So if you want to keep learning about more topics, how to do navigation, how to cook food in the backcountry, how to plan multi-day trips, how to plan a trip in general, how do I know if there's water out there, what's the terrain going to be like, what gear do I need to bring with me, okay? Go ahead and subscribe to the channel because this is probably going to be like a year-long project. We do have a Facebook group called Backpacking Ohio and Beyond where we have chat rooms and stuff like that where you can ask more in-depth questions. I will link that down in the description box below. All right, everybody, as always, thank you so much for watching. Without you, this channel doesn't exist. By the time you see this video, we should be sitting over 1,000 subscribers. Never thought I'd be there in under a year, so thank you all so much. If you guys like the video, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you guys in the next one.